Claude 3.7 was released about a month ago, and everyone has been rightfully obsessed with its reasoning and coding capabilities. But its ability to design mind-blowing UIs has flown under the radar. And I'm here today to bring it the justice it deserves. Because most people think that vibe coding is just about the technical side, right? Just about the code, just about the logic, just about the reasoning, just about the AI's ability to plan and execute. But the hardest part about vibe coding is getting a design for your app that really gets you jazzed up and excited. And you've probably been there before. 1 out of every 10 times, maybe 1 out of every 20 times, you get something that actually looks professional. Like something you yourself would pay for. But those other 9 times out of 10, you get a steamy pile of or at least the output feels super mediocre. That's why Claude 3.7 plus this 2-step system I'm about to show you feels like divine inspiration. Now, I've had a lot of you comment on my videos or drop me DMs asking for more of the actual prompts that I use. So I'm here to deliver the one that I think has impacted me the most. When I set out to create this prompt, I spent a lot of time using deep research, using Claude, using other LLMs to help me understand what makes a really good professional FANG-style software application look really professional. Like what makes those big companies' UIs actually great? What are the principles behind them? Because to make any prompt actually work for you, you need to be very specific about the task you are giving it and the guidelines by which it will solve the problem. So in order to give direction well, we need to cover off on 2 primary categories. 1, you have to have the subject matter expertise so that you know to tell it what an actual good output would be. And number 2, you need to be able to prompt the system to maximize the quality of your output and the accuracy of your output. All prompts are not created equal. 2 people with the same intention and the same body of knowledge prompting on their own can get 2 very different results. And so this is about consistency and a predictable system based on principles that these companies use. And so let's break down each of those 2 areas inside of our prompt. So if you've seen my other videos, you know that I really like to structure my prompts the same way every time. And so we roughly follow the guideline of goal, format, guidelines, context. What problem am I trying to solve? What output format do I want the system to return results in? What are the guardrails that this thing needs to have? And then what's the context of the thing I want it to do? Those are the 4 we're always covering off on. So let's look at the different components of our prompt template. So we have our goal section, right? So you're an industry veteran SaaS product designer. You've built high-touch UIs for FANG-style companies. Your goal is to take the context below, take the guidelines below, take the user inspiration, and turn it into a functional design. Then we have our inspiration section, which we are going to get to in a second because I believe this is one of the pieces that makes this process really awesome. But we're telling the system what we like. Then in this aesthetics piece, we are telling the system what makes a great product design great. So this is where I spend a lot of time extracting principles out of what makes a, again, FANG style, Facebook, Apple, Netflix, Google, like those really big companies, what makes their design style so good. And so we've broken down some of those things in here. And then we give some practicalities, meaning like what things do you kind of find as you're developing this that are annoying that you want it to do a certain way every time, like use Tailwind every time, use Lucid React icons. I want you to simulate an iPhone frame so that it looks like an actual, app, things like that. And again, this is helpful because when we go in and we pump this into like Cursor or Windsurf, it needs to know, like have some sort of tech direction to understand what it is that we are trying to build. Then we get into our project-specific guidelines, and I'll show you some examples of each of these in a second. But project-specific guidelines, so like anything that's very specific to this project that you want it to kind of be guided by. And then we have our app overview. So what is a like 1 to 2 sentence overview of what we're trying to build here? Think of it like an elevator pitch, right? You're stuck in an elevator with a guy that can fund your dreams. How are you going to communicate to them the dopest version of what this thing is by the time the elevator gets to the floor that guy's getting out at, right? So what is that for your app? And then we give it the task, right? So your task is to build us out vertical mockups, okay? And then we say, hey, I want you to output your results into an index.html file and make sure it's hooked properly into our app.js. Okay, now down here, the reason we do this is I like to build these out just using vanilla React. I use the Create React app and then just prompt into Cursor from there. And so I'm just telling it like, hey, go look at the app.js file, which is where it loads out from, and just make sure it works with that, basically. I don't want to do a bunch of configurations. This isn't even the real project I'm going to use. I'm just trying to build out the guidelines so I can see what this app might look like, right? We're building mockups here. So now we can hop over and look at what a filled out version of this same thing looks like. So for example, in project specific guidelines, I was building a news app in this example, and so I didn't really want it to actually have images because of what I'm trying to build, like a non-biased news network. And so I didn't want the images because images can communicate a lot of emotion and ideas. And so I didn't want the feed to have those. So I was saying, don't mock it up with any of that. I give it an overview, right? This is an AI news app that detects bias in news stories and returns to the user sanitized headlines and reports only on facts of stories in bullets. Okay. And then I tell it what I want, what screens I want actually outputted. So a splash screen, a home screen, and a detailed view. And then again, we're just telling it this is where it's going to go. So before I move on, the reason this is so powerful is we're using the power of that raw computing capability of Claude 3.7 to solve a very narrowly defined problem, creating a really beautiful UI. I don't need you hooking up components. I don't need you putting process power to thinking how all of these different things connect to each other in a functional way. I want you to build me a beautiful user interface. And so you want to repeat this process we're going through for every feature in your app. I tend to do them sometimes in chunks of 2, sometimes 3, sometimes 4. Kind of depends on what's the complexity of this thing you're asking it for. Anytime I'm using a language model or a tool like this, I really do like to keep my problems really well defined and contained so that all of the thinking power is going into that specific problem. And so this is awesome because once we've gone and mocked out all of those major screens of our app, we can prompt it into our master prompting framework, which will actually turn it into functional code, meaning having backend, having APIs, having a database design schema, having some actual DevOps deployment, having authentication, having all of those things actually hooked up. We want to take these screens and the styling and give it to the system before we even start to hook those pieces up. And so in a minute or two, we're going to plug that exact prompt that I just showed into Cursor, and we are going to let it fly, and we're going to look at the output. But before we do that, I want to really break down that inspiration section and how I actually generate that, because that is what, in my opinion, gets UIs that are really looking like the way you want them to look. And we're going to keep this video short and sweet because that's how fast this system works. So allow me to break the fourth wall for a moment and tell my editor, start that timer. If I don't get this done in 10 minutes, my cute dogs are gonna get it. And so we're gonna hop into one of my favorite tools, Mobbin. So here we are inside of Mobbin, and what this app does, if you've seen my other videos, is they go through to other companies' apps like Peloton, for example, or Spotify, or Twitch, or Instacart, or Phantom. And what they do is they take screenshots of all of the different screens within the app. Now, this is awesome because what we can do is we can go through, we can find apps that inspire us, and we can download those screenshots and then send them over in that inspiration that we're giving to Cursor. So let's say you were going to build an app, for example, that, I don't know, you take a picture of a restaurant menu item and you then take a picture of the actual food that comes out, and you want to be able to feed it to a language model and give it notes, and it pops you out a professional Michelin star version of that recipe. I don't know, that actually sounds pretty good. Someone go develop that and let me know in the comments when it's up, and I will shout you out. But say that's what we wanted to do. Well, we could think through what the features might be, and you could use my other prompting frameworks to brainstorm features. But what we could do is we could come through here, say maybe go to the category food and drink, and we can start thinking through, like, what ways do we like that people have presented these sorts of things that we might want to consider using for our app. And so maybe at some point you have like a social component planned, and we kind of like the look of this Epicurious app, and so we pop that open in a new tab, and then we keep scrolling through, and we want to try to find some other options, and maybe it's like, I'm kind of played out on this category, I don't really like it. Then maybe we go and we get inspiration from other areas, right? Other verticals. Often the best inspiration isn't within the vertical. It's looking into another one and seeing how can I translate that idea, right? So maybe we go into the entertainment vertical, which is going to maybe have stuff having to do with video capture and things like that. And we can pick out some other things, and we can like them for different reasons, right? It's not just that, hey, we want to clone this design. Maybe we like the typography. Maybe we like the color, the spacing. Maybe there's just something about it that we don't even know why we like it, and we can pull that out. So I'm just going to fly through here real quick and just, pick out a few of them. Let's say that we really liked the way that this one looks. We'll go up to one other category real quick, social networking. And let's say that we like the way that this works for our imaging. And so now we just go in here, we can look through the screens, and we can start downloading some of them, right? So we could come up here and say download. Maybe we want to have a dietary requirement picker inside of our app. Maybe we want to have a feed of other things that our friends have made. Maybe we want to have a nice organized viewing of our own recipes that we have. Okay, download those. We come in here and say, do we like any of this? I actually don't really like this one. I don't know why I opened it. And then let's go in here and say, hey, maybe we like the what the photo picker looked like, right? So we come in here, boom, right? So you get the idea. We're going to go through. We're going to pick out a few different things. And then from here, we are going to hop into Cursor, and we're going to show what it looks like to build this prompt out. All right, guys, so here we are. We're inside of Cursor, and now I'm just going to pop over. So I did create a basic React app with the Create React app. If you're not familiar with that, I'll have a link to it in the comments. Really easy command line, like one command terminal thing that you run. You'll get this thing spun up. And so what we can do then is we can go into our file here, or not our file, but I have this empty test.html file. And inside of this agent section, I've selected Claude 3.7 Sonnet, and I'm just pasting in that completed, filled out version that we looked at earlier. And we can just look through it one last time. So remember in inspirations now, we have this section in here where we can upload our inspiration. And now for my news app, I have a series of images that I had downloaded, which I'm going to pick out right now and add them in. And so I've uploaded, you can see up here, all of my images from my computer. And now in one of these images, I really liked how they did their, I liked the general accent colors and spacing and things like that. And so I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say in the attached images, I really liked the off-white / cream colored background of the Pocket app and the red accenting it did. Okay, so I'm just going to give it a little bit of direction and say, hey, I liked that generally, but as you can see, I'm not really giving it a ton of direction outside of that. And then we have all of our other prompts we put in there, okay, that we saw before. And now we're just going to hit send. And as soon as this is done, I will turn back on and we'll be able to see exactly what it built for us. But we can see now it's going out, looking at all the stuff we have in our directory, and it is going to, build this whole thing out for us. And boom, here we go. So I went back a tiny bit because it had a few little things that were popping up, but I just told it to delete them. But now we can see we have this entire file with all of these different screens in here. I had it make 6 screens of the app in total. And so if we go and look now in our Chrome, boom, we can see the output that we have. And now this looks, to be honest, pretty awesome, if you ask me. So really nice, clean initial screen. Really got the idea I was shooting for with giving headlines and then having bias detection in there and just calling out what key facts of this were. I then asked it to show me what a detailed screen would look like. So if I, clicked on this TechCrunch one, for example, I would be popped into a screen that looks like this. Here's what the bias detection looks like. A little bit of messed up overlap, but here's where it will be showing me my verified facts and the source of those facts, related articles. I then had this idea for, dude, wouldn't it be really cool if it gave you historical context of a situation, right? And so up here, it's talking about, or we have this deep research section where we can go in and get a lot of historical context behind a news story. And you can talk with the story back and forth, right? So you can actually ask questions to an AI agent saying, hey, break down the timeline of events, break down this, break down that. And then you can go through and ask it to add into this context other stories. So if you're looking at, hey, this is kind of related to these 3 things that happened in 1998, go pull me those stories into this context and now re-explain to me how we got to this point in the context of all of those other stories. But just really cool. Like, I didn't have to prompt any of this stuff, guys. Like this whole piece up here, none of this, the icons it uses, this search box, all of this, like none of this was prompted, right? It came up with all of these because of how we gave the system guidelines. And then we have this cool little share analysis thing. I didn't even think of this, which I think is cool, where it's like, if I want to share this with somebody, like, do you want to share the full article, just the bias analysis of it, the fact list? Do you want to add comments to the article and like share it with the friends so you can discuss it? A lot of really cool ideas in here. So this is really pretty fucking cool. So there we have it, guys. A beautiful UI that you can keep stacking on, which is what I really like about this. If we're making it in 2 or 3 screens at a time, we can go feature by feature through our app and just really brainstorm, like, what would a really cool version of this aesthetically actually look like? And then boom, we can just keep stacking and stacking and stacking and go through like what we want this app to actually look like, so that when we pass it to our broader prompt framework to actually make the code and make the database and make the APIs and all of that, we're not worried about what this thing is going to look like. And it knows now what components are going to be on the front end and how they're going to interact, so that it can build out, again, the back end that actually supports all of those things. Now, I do have a video that's going to be coming next week that's going to talk about exactly that. How do we take it from here and pump it into something that is actually a functioning application that we can turn on and look at? So that is it, guys. I hope you learned something new. If you're tired of struggling with building UIs that look like shit, I really highly recommend go to my free school group, download the exact prompt template that I use, and start using this in your actual day-to-day workflows. Because if you wouldn't buy your app, you cannot expect somebody else to. And that is the truth. So stay tuned for the next videos where we dive really deep into this. And again, let me know in the comments if there's anything that you want to see me build on top of this process. Catch you in the next video.